The words fell into the air like a cold blade, slicing through the silence of the marble-clad room. Dana Whitfield, the branch manager, stood squarely in front of the reception desk, her eyes sharp, her voice striking down like a hammer. Aria Morgan froze for a moment. Her heart tightened in her chest, but her face showed no change. The 45-year-old woman simply blinked slowly, her calm gaze sweeping across the opulent VIP lounge, the high ceiling, the golden light reflecting off the cold marble floor. 10:17 a.m., Miami. Outside it was hot and humid, but inside the air conditioning hung heavy, as suffocating as the contempt hurled in her face. Aria had known this would happen. She had chosen to appear here in dark jeans, a light blue cashmere sweater, and simple black leather shoes. No logo-stamped handbags, no dazzling jewelry. Only a slim briefcase carrying a tablet, every detail intentional. A test. But even with preparation, when those words struck, her heart still jolted. Memories came flooding back. At 23, her first account frozen because of suspicious funds. At 26, denied a loan despite having more than 30% collateral. 2 decades had passed. Dozens of multi-billion-dollar deals had proven her ability. Yet in the eyes of some here, she remained an outsider. Aria inhaled deeply and moved forward. Each step echoed softly on the marble floor, blending into the tense silence of the room. A few waiting clients looked up, some frowning, others whispering. It felt like a play whose ending they thought they already knew. Dana braced her hand on the dark wooden desk, her blonde bob swaying slightly with each motion. "This isn't a place for strolling," she sneered. Aria set her tablet on the desk. "I would like to use the private lounge to conduct a $5 million withdrawal." Her words were clear, each syllable sharp as steel. Dana only smirked. "We require proof of funds," she said flatly, though her eyes cut like a blade. In that instant, the air froze. Aria didn't flinch. She opened the tablet, tapped swiftly, and placed the proof right before Dana. Every move fluid, composed. But before Dana could look, a hand swept across. "Don't block the way, sweetheart." Grant Ellison, an investor clad in a gleaming grey suit, sneered and knocked the tablet to the floor. It landed with a sharp crack against the marble, an insult made tangible. The room trembled. Aria looked at Grant, her eyes sharp but silent. He turned away without a glance back. In the corner, Sloane Carter, a 30-year-old private banking officer, crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes. "That amount doesn't add up. You could have stolen it." His voice wasn't loud, but enough for 2 or 3 others to glance up. A frown here, a whisper there, suspicion spreading like oil across water. Aria closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, her tone steady. "Check my name." Dana shook her head. "Impossible. This isn't an open trading floor." The atmosphere wavered. A young man, Jordan Park, 32, a tech founder, raised his phone. The red light blinked. The room felt as though a spotlight had been cast on bare truth. "Don't." Aria's voice rang out, not loud, but firm enough to stop him. "We settle this with truth, not with a clip." From the back row, Marcus Hale, 41, tall in a light grey suit, stepped forward. "Brother," he murmured to Jordan, "lower it. This isn't for the feed. This is for a voice." Jordan hesitated, but when Aria met his eyes, calm and unwavering, he slowly lowered the phone. The air eased, but tension still crackled like hidden wires in the walls. Tessa Nguyen, 27, seated near Aria, gripped her bag so tight her knuckles whitened, her lips pressed until they bled. At last she whispered, "Disgraceful." Arya turned to her and nodded. Say it louder. Tessa sprang to her feet. She's not the one in the wrong. You are. Her finger trembled, but pointed straight at Dana and Sloane. Heads turned, some eyes supportive, others scornful. Sloane raised his brow with a half smile. Security is already waiting. Grant, now leaning against a marble column, let out a mocking laugh. You people really think this? That this woman has $500,000 in her account? Don't joke. A pawn shop on the street suits her better. He tossed a slip of paper, which slid across the polished floor and stopped at Araya's feet. Tessa bent down, picked it up, and read aloud. Go to the pawn shop. The sound froze the room. An older woman clutched her handbag. A young man holding a child looked up. The quiet dissolved into murmurs, disorder. Arya rose. Her voice rang out, firm but not shouting. Enough. Every word you speak is destroying this house itself. Dana scoffed. You are no client. You're a fraud. Go play rich somewhere else. Arya drew a breath and pulled out her phone. Lena, she said. Initiate Protocol 6. On the other end, Lena Ortiz, her executive assistant, replied without hesitation, her voice steady. Standing by, ma'am. Arya fixed her gaze on Dana, her tone low but cold as steel. You will regret this. Not because I will scream. Not because I will record. But because you just told the wrong woman she doesn't belong to the bank that I own. Dana laughed derisively. Delusions don't scare me. The room held its breath. A storm had begun. The soft beep of the speakerphone echoed through the room, weaving into the air thick with contempt and tension. Lena Ortiz did not need to ask further. Just the 2 words, Protocol 6, were enough to set an entire hidden system in motion. Dana Whitfield arched a brow, her thin smile sharp as a blade. Who did you call? An online lawyer? Or some virtual friend on social media? Here, we only trust real documents. Arya gave no reply. She sat down, her composure unnervingly calm. In the depth of her dark eyes, there was something that sent a chill down the spine of more than one bystander. Grant Ellison burst into laughter, his voice booming against the high ceiling. This is the most entertaining thing I've seen all month. A mediocre woman coming here demanding $500,000 without a single piece of paper. What does she think she is? The queen of the bank? Murmurs rippled through the lounge. A young man chuckled awkwardly. A middle-aged woman whispered, Truly doesn't know her place. Only Jordan Park, phone lowered in his hand, kept his unblinking gaze fixed on Arya. What he saw in her eyes was not delusion, but resolve. Arya tilted her head slightly, her voice steady. They are listening, Dana. Every word you just spoke, every mocking laugh, has been recorded. Not by some cheap phone, but by the internal system you didn't even know existed. Dana laughed, though her eyes flickered for an instant. This bank does not run on empty threats. Tessa Nguyen clenched her fists, her eyes glistening with anger. No, it runs on prejudice. And today, your prejudice has been laid bare. The room fell silent. Tessa had never spoken so boldly, yet the weight of her words made several guests nod in agreement. Sloane Carter sneered. These people always play the victim card. Let's see what she says when security arrives. Instantly, Dana nodded for action. Gerald Stone, the deputy branch manager, shuffled forward. 49 years old, graying hair, rigid demeanor. He looked as if caught in a grinding mill. You will leave here immediately, Dana snapped. Gerald, escort her out. This woman is an imposter. Gerald turned to Arya. His eyes wavered. For a brief moment, it seemed he might speak, but instead he clenched his jaw and took another half-step forward. Arya did not move away. "If you touch me," she said slowly, "your name will be in the disciplinary file by the end of today." Gerald froze. A sheen of sweat gathered at his temple. He recalled the vague warnings from upper management months ago. Do not make mistakes with special clients. He had never thought it might mean her. Suddenly, Arya's phone buzzed lightly. Lena's voice rang out clear. "Arya, I have accessed the system. Dana's call to security has been time-stamped. All biased statements have been extracted. We have the file." Dana's face paled for a split second before she forced a smile. "Oh, impressive. Do you think a few phone calls can shake an entire institution?" Arya leaned forward. "Not a few phone calls. The truth. And truth is always greater than the illusion of power." Grant reclined back in his chair, clapping slowly, his tone dripping with mockery. "I have never seen anyone so confident. Keep going. I want to watch you fall from the top straight to the bottom." Jordan whispered, just loud enough for Tessa. "I don't think she's bluffing. There's something very real." Tessa nodded firmly. "She doesn't tremble. She doesn't beg. This is not the way of a fraud." At that moment, the frosted glass door swung open. A man in a dark blue uniform entered, his nameplate glinting under the light. Owen Pratt, security lead. His steps were heavy, his eyes cold. "What's happening?" Owen asked. Sloane immediately pointed. Her, impersonating a VIP client, refused to verify, causing a disturbance. Owen nodded and strode straight toward Arya. "Hand over your bag and tablet. Now." His tone held no courtesy. It was a command. Arya didn't move. Her gaze cut through him, steady and piercing. Owen didn't wait. He shoved the leather bag off the chair, letting it crash onto the floor. The harsh thud reverberated across the lounge, drawing startled gasps from a few guests. "You are being detained for non-compliance," Owen declared. Marcus Hale immediately stepped forward, blocking his path. "That is unlawful conduct. She has broken no rule." The atmosphere ignited. Tessa shot to her feet. Jordan fumbled with his phone, while Arya remained seated, her hands resting lightly on her lap, shoulders straight, eyes locked on Owen. "Touch me again," she said, her voice low, each word slicing through the air. "And Summit Wealth will pay the price, not just in money. In reputation." Owen scoffed. "You think a few threats?" But before he could finish, Lena's voice cut through from the speaker. "Arya, Phase 2 is active. The Corporate Ethics Council is listening live. Owen's file has been extracted as well. 3 unresolved misconduct reports." Owen staggered, his eyes blinking rapidly. What? Arya rose to her feet. The entire air shifted. She was no longer a woman humiliated. She stood like a verdict given form. "I have been silent long enough," she said, her tone ironclad. "You called me a fraud, a thief, an outsider. But the truth..." She paused, her gaze sweeping across Dana, Grant, Sloane, Gerald, Owen. "The truth is, I am the one you rejected. And it is that rejection that will end your careers." A wave of murmurs swept through the lounge. Guests whispered, some nodded, and phones were lifted once again, not to capture scandal, but to witness truth being revealed. Dana laughed loudly, her voice harsh as rusted metal. "You are delusional. No one believes such cheap theatrics." Arya did not need to respond. Lena spoke for her. Arya Morgan, CEO of Morgan Enterprises, majority owner of Summit Wealth Bank, with 81% shares. All verified data has been uploaded to the system. And Dana, Every trace of your prejudice this morning has been recorded permanently." In an instant, Dana's face froze. Colour drained, leaving her ashen. Gerald's shoulders sagged. Sloane swallowed hard. Grant smirked faintly, but his gaze faltered. Owen stood paralysed. The lounge was no longer a place of luxury. It had become a courtroom, and the verdict was clear. Arya exhaled slowly. In the silence that followed, only one sentence remained. "The storm has begun, and you are its eye." The air thickened like a sheet of ice, sealing the room. Every breath could be heard in the strained silence. Dana Whitfield stood frozen, lips trembling as she forced a crooked smile. "CEO? 81% shares? Sounds like a comedy act," Dana said, but her tone had lost its edge. It cracked and wavered, like she was clinging to a rotting rope. Grant Ellison was different. He burst into loud laughter, clapping as if it were all a performance for his amusement. "Perfect. A woman proclaiming herself queen of banking. Go on, I'm waiting for the police to drag you away." Arya Morgan stood tall, the golden light reflecting across her calm face, each feature carved as though from stone. She said nothing more. Her silence unsettled the loudest voices in the room. Outside, sirens wailed, faint but drawing closer. Some clients exchanged anxious looks. No one knew what would happen once the police walked in. Tessa Nguyen could no longer stay seated. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with fire. "Are you blind? Can't you see? She's no imposter. This was a test, and every one of you just failed it." Sloane Carter snapped his head around, his voice biting. "And who are you to judge? Do you think you're clever? Or are you complicit in this charade?" Tessa did not back down. "If I were complicit, I would have stayed silent. But I speak because the truth is right in front of you, and the truth is that you are afraid to face it." Jordan Park, silent since lowering his phone, stepped forward. His voice was low and clear. "She told me not to record, and I listened because I saw no deception in her eyes. You can sneer, you can mock, but I've seen more CEOs than you think. None keep their composure under humiliation like this, except those who know for certain they stand on the true summit." Grant raised an eyebrow, smirking with disdain, though his hand clenched tightly in his pocket. Suddenly, Lena Ortiz's voice came again through the speaker, calm yet sharp. "Arya, I just uncovered something interesting. 8 complaints of discrimination at the Miami branch over the past 2 years, all tied to Dana or Sloane, all closed with the excuse, insufficient evidence." Her words detonated like a bomb. Some clients gasped, others exchanged shocked glances. Gerald Stone, the deputy manager, stepped back half a pace. His face paled, his eyes flickering with regret and fear. Dana stiffened but tried to twist her defense. Those files lacked evidence. She just Arya cut her off, her voice cold as steel. Lacked evidence, or lacked the courage to face the truth. Each word struck like a hammer against the marble floor. The heavy air broke with a soft knock. Jordan had set his phone on the table, not recording, just the screen glowing. If you don't believe her, then believe the system that is capturing every second, every word we've spoken. There is no escape from lies. Sloane forced a laugh, but his voice faltered. At the end of the day, those are minor complaints. A big bank doesn't collapse over a few accusations. Before the words had even landed, Lena's voice cut in firmly. Not just accusations. I cross-checked the data. All 8 files bear Dana's signature, and 4 carry Gerald's co-signature. This is no procedural error. This is systemic collusion. Gerald trembled. I was only following orders. Orders from whom? Aria asked, her eyes locking on him. Gerald lowered his head. No answer. In that moment, the glass doors opened once more. 2 police officers entered, their shoes striking the floor with hard echoes. One officer, in his 40s, spoke out. We received a report of financial fraud. Who made the call? Sloane shot his hand up instantly, his voice loud as if to prove innocence. Me. That woman is impersonating a VIP client. She demanded $500,000 in cash with no verification whatsoever. Many clients turned toward Aria, holding their breath for her response. Aria did not flinch. She turned slightly to the officers, her voice slow and measured. I will make a statement. But not yet. No one had time to guess her intent when a voice suddenly rang out, weak but strong enough to tear through the silence. They are lying. All eyes shifted. In the corner, near the frosted glass wall, a young woman stood. It was Nia Wallace, 23, in a faded denim jacket, her small face lit with fierce eyes. I know because 2 weeks ago I was here, Nia said, her voice trembling but resolute. I came to open an account for my photography business, and Sloane Carter told me directly. We don't open accounts for freelancers with messy credit histories. I recorded it. I never intended to expose it, but today I must. The murmurs rose heavier than ever. The police officer frowned. You have the recording. Nia pulled her phone from her pocket, her hand shaking as she played the file. In the dead silence, Sloane's voice rang out, crystal clear. Unstable, not suitable for prime clients. Go somewhere else. Sloane's face drained of color. Dana lost control, screaming, That's fabricated! No court will accept that garbage. But no one was listening anymore. Aria looked around the room, her voice steady, not raised, yet heard by all. You called me a fraud. You tried to turn me into a criminal inside the very house I built. But the truth is, stepping out of the shadows. And today, truth doesn't need me to protect it. It protects itself. A beat of silence before the first claps broke out, slow, scattered. Then the entire room joined in unison. Dana stumbled back, her eyes wide. Grant frowned, his mocking smile gone at last. Gerald bowed his head low, while Sloane shook so hard he had to grip the table for support. Aria did not smile. She only whispered, just loud enough for those nearest to hear. The storm has made landfall. Applause thundered through the room like drum beats, shattering the walls of silence that had been held back for too long. Yet in that moment, no smile touched the lips of Aria Morgan. She stood tall, composed, like a judge preparing to read a verdict. Dana Whitfield recoiled, her face pale. This charade proves nothing, she shouted, her voice already twisted. A cheap recording? An imposter? It all means nothing. But her own outburst only revealed what everyone could now see, that her false authority was cracking. Grant Ellison, still clinging to arrogance, leaned against the marble column, his tone forced. This is just an act. No one withdraws $500,000 without being questioned. And she, who does she think she is? Aria turned, her gaze sweeping the room until it locked onto Grant. You want to know who I am? She paused, long enough for the entire room to hold its breath. I am the one who bought this bank. I am the person you just called a thief, inside the very place where I signed the deed of ownership. The room erupted. Some clients gasped. An older man whispered, Impossible. Nia Wallace looked at Aria, tears glistening in her eyes. I knew it, she murmured. Only someone truly powerful could remain that calm. Dana let out a bitter laugh, desperate to reclaim ground. If you're really the CEO, why didn't you prove it from the start? Do you enjoy being looked down on? Arya's eyes did not blink. I wanted to see how you would treat someone you deemed worthless. And today, you gave me the answer. The answer this institution has avoided for years. Silence fell again. Each word dropped heavy, like an indictment carved into stone. Gerald Stone trembled, his voice barely a whisper. We were wrong. Dana snapped toward him, furious. Shut up. Don't forget who put you here. Gerald gave no reply, only bowed his head. In his weary eyes, regret flickered for the first time. At that moment, Lena Ortiz's voice cut through the speaker, cold but steady. Arya, Stage 3 of Protocol 6 has been activated. The files of Dana, Sloane, and Gerald are being sent to the Corporate Ethics Council. We also uncovered 8 buried complaints, all linked to women of color. The system confirms primary responsibility lies with Dana Whitfield. A storm of murmurs surged, fiercer than before. Clients shifted from curiosity to outrage. A man rose to his feet, his voice sharp. This is the bank I entrusted with my money? A place where staff decide clients by the color of their skin? Dana stumbled back, panic in her eyes. No, that's not it. These were procedures. We were only following safety regulations. Arya stepped forward, her voice deep like a tolling bell. No, Dana. That was not regulation. That was prejudice. And today, it has been stripped bare before everyone. The police officer, the middle-aged man who had observed in silence, finally spoke. His brow furrowed as he said, We were called here for a fraud report. But what we've heard paints a very different picture. And it is not a good one. Grant cut in sharply. Don't be fooled. This is a staged act. She calls herself CEO, but she has shown no proof. You cannot rely on words and a few recordings. Arya did not hesitate. She reached into a leather case, withdrawing a slim black folder. On its cover, the golden logo of Summit Wealth Bank gleamed under the lights. She opened it and handed it directly to the officer. Here is the notarized deed of ownership. Here is the executive ID card. And here is the board authorization, signed by every director. The officer flipped through each page, his expression hard. At last, he nodded. Documents are valid. A rush of breath swept the room. Some clients covered their mouths, others shook their heads in disbelief. Dana collapsed into her chair, her face drained of all color. Sloane staggered back, lips moving without sound. Gerald shut his eyes, as though wishing to vanish from the room. Grant still stood, but his hand shook. He forced himself to speak. No matter what, no matter who you are, you cannot bring down an entire branch in a single morning. Arya turned sharply to him, her voice as cutting as a blade. You are mistaken. I am not bringing down a branch. I am bringing down a rotting system. And it begins with you, Grant Ellison, the man who knocked my tablet to the ground as though my dignity was worthless. The room erupted again, this time with anger directed at Grant. Some clients shook their heads, others looked at him with open contempt. The officer closed the folder and fixed his gaze on Dana. You filed a false report. Do you understand how serious it is to lie to the police? Dana stammered, her former authority gone. I thought Arya cut her off, her tone like ice. You thought you had the right to decide who belongs here. But today, that arrogance ends your career. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Arya turned to face everyone, her voice firm, every word resonating. You called me a fraud. You tried to cast me out of this place. But the truth is, I am the one who owns it. And now I declare, every abuser of power in this room will pay the price. The space exploded with thunderous applause, no longer scattered, but united and strong. Tessa wept. Jordan clenched his fist and nodded. Nia trembled, but her eyes blazed. Arya raised her head high, her gaze like a storm that had just swept through. Justice does not need to shout. It only needs truth. And the truth stands here, hidden no longer. The applause roared like thunder. But in the hearts of many, it was not simple praise. It was an eruption after years of witnessing injustice in silence. Arya Morgan didn't smile. She stood tall, her gaze drilling into every face before her. The VIP lounge was no longer a lounge. It had become a courtroom, and she was both judge and plaintiff. Dana Whitfield shrank into her chair, gripping the armrests as if they could save her. Sloane Carter dug her nails into her palms until they bled. Gerald Stone bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. Grant Ellison still tried to stand firm, but the arrogance on his face had shattered into pieces, exposing the fear beneath. Arya drew a long breath, her voice ringing out, resolute. Dana Whitfield, branch manager of Miami, you are terminated. Reason? Racial discrimination, abuse of power, suppression of client complaints. This decision is effective immediately. Dana opened her mouth, but no words came. Only a strangled sob stuck in her throat. She was used to standing above others, casting looks of disdain. She had never imagined the day truth would crush her, inside the very room she once ruled. Arya did not stop. Her eyes shifted to Gerald. Gerald Stone, deputy manager. You are terminated for complicity, for signing off on 4 falsified complaint files. Your silence was the hand that helped injustice thrive. Gerald lifted his head, his eyes red. He nodded without resistance. A single tear fell, striking the cold marble floor. I knew, he whispered. I knew this day would come. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some looked at Gerald with pity, but most with anger, because silence can destroy as much as wrongdoing. Arya turned, her gaze fixed on Sloane Carter. Sloane, you are terminated for deliberately refusing accounts to legitimate clients, fabricating risk reports, and calling the police on false pretenses. You destroyed client trust with your prejudice. Sloane's face drained of color as she tried to scream. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. If I had known, I never... Arya cut her off, her voice sharp as a blade. What if I had been someone else? What if I had not been CEO, but just a young woman like Nia? Would you still bury my dreams? The answer is clear. Sloane choked on her words, tears spilling, but no one cared to hear her excuses. Owen Pratt, head of security, still stood like stone, but when Arya's eyes found him, he swallowed hard. Owen Pratt, you are terminated for unlawful use of force, coercion of a client, and failure to de-escalate. You did not protect the client. You protected prejudice. Owen clenched his fists, then loosened them, lowering his head. I understand. Arya drew another breath, her eyes finally locking on Grant Ellison. And you, Grant, you are not an employee, but you are a client. You are permanently banned from all Summit Wealth facilities. Reason: harassment, insult, racial discrimination, and prior warnings on record. You are no longer a priority client. You are nothing but a lesson. The room erupted with noise. Some clapped, some exhaled sharply, others shook their heads in disgust. Grant's face flushed, veins bulging on his neck. You cannot ban me. I have tens of millions in my accounts. You will lose more than you gain. Arya did not blink. We did not build this bank to serve empty egos. We built it to defend the dignity of every client. And today, dignity is worth more than the money you carry." Grant stiffened, then slammed his hand on the table. But no one feared him anymore. 2 police officers stepped forward, their voices stern. "Mr. Ellison, we need you to stay for questioning. Take a seat." Grant cursed under his breath, but at last dropped into the leather chair, his face burning red. The room now seemed brighter. Those who once held power here had fallen one by one. The whispers of the clients had changed, no longer doubting Arya, but filled with respect and admiration. Tessa Nguyen wiped her tears and stepped to Arya's side. "You didn't just fight for yourself, you fought for all of us." Jordan Park nodded, his eyes blazing. "I thought justice only lived online, in viral clips. But today, I saw justice alive in front of me. No cameras needed, only truth." Naya Wallace trembled, her voice choked. "Without you, my small dream would have died 2 weeks ago. But now I believe I can start again." Arya placed her hand on Naya's shoulder, a rare gentleness after the storm. "You will not start alone. This bank will open your account. No fees, no conditions. Because fairness is not a privilege. It is a basic right." Another wave of applause crashed through the room, no longer scattered, but fierce, relentless, echoing through the lounge. Arya closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound fill her. Then she opened them, facing the crowd, her voice deep and steady. "Today is not just a day of dismissals. Today is a day of rebuilding. This bank no longer belongs to those who sit high and humiliate others. It belongs to those who dare to stand, to speak, to believe." And we begin again. Right here, no one said another word. They knew a new chapter had begun. After the storm of dismissals, the room no longer held shouting voices or words of contempt. But the silence that remained was not gentle. It was heavy, like the sky after a thunderstorm, carrying the scent of damp earth and the breath of anticipation. Arya Morgan stood in the center of the lounge, with no chair of authority, no symbol of power except her very presence. Those who had just been cast down sat frozen like statues, while the rest of the clients and employees seemed to hold their breath, waiting for her next step. Arya looked around, her eyes sweeping across every face. "Do you think it ends when I fire them?" "No. This is only the beginning." A murmur spread. Some clients nodded, others frowned, but no one left. She turned to her phone and switched on the speaker. Lena Ortiz's voice rang out, steady and unifying, as though binding the entire scene together. "Arya, the board has approved for you to launch reform immediately. The entire operations of the Miami branch can be suspended if you order it." Arya nodded without hesitation. "I order it. Effective now." A wave of astonishment swept through the room. Some clients stared in shock, others nodded in agreement. A middle-aged man leapt to his feet. Finally, someone brave enough to do the right thing. Arya raised her hand, her voice resounding but controlled. "From this moment, all transactions at the Miami branch are suspended. No account openings, no withdrawals, no consultations. Everything awaits audit, because we cannot continue serving if we don't know what we are serving." Her declaration struck like lightning. Dana Whitfield sat petrified. Sloane Carter's mouth hung open. Gerald Stone bowed his head. His shoulders collapsed. Grant Ellison ground his teeth, but he was nothing more than a powerless spectator now. Arya drew a deep breath, then spoke again, slow and deliberate, each word hammered into place. Today, right here in this room, we will launch the Summit Equity Program. Not next month, not next quarter. But now, the lounge erupted in chatter. Many didn't yet understand what it was, but the conviction in her voice silenced them immediately. Arya explained, "We will implement verbal audits. Every word spoken, every behavior will be recorded and reviewed. No more hiding prejudice under the mask of procedure. We will require face-to-face pledges from every employee. Whoever wants to stay must sign with both action and word." Tessa Nguyen lifted her head, her voice trembling with hope. "And will that protect clients like me, like Nia?" Arya looked directly at her. "It will protect everyone. No one will ever fear walking into this bank again." Nia Wallace clutched her phone, her eyes brimming. This is the first time I've seen someone care about my small dream." Arya smiled faintly. "Rare amid the storm. Your dream is not small. It is worth as much as anyone's." Lena's voice cut in firmly. "I have prepared the launch documents. The internal ethics team will arrive in 30 minutes. They request Arya to personally lead the first pledge session." The room stirred again, but this time not with outrage. It was the buzz of hope, of change breaking through. Owen Pratt, the recently dismissed head of security, cleared his throat. Everyone turned. His face was ashen, his eyes weary. "I need to say something." The air grew heavy. Arya neither nodded nor shook her head. She simply waited. Owen inhaled hard, his hands hanging limp. "I did not just fail to protect clients. I participated. 2 months ago, Sloane came to me. She said Dana feared negative reports would cause trouble. I was ordered to remove those deemed unfit from the room before they could file complaints. I did it. I knew it was wrong, but I did it. Because I thought silence would keep my job." The lounge buzzed. Some cursed, some shook their heads. Arya narrowed her eyes, her voice cold as steel. "You nearly had me arrested today. You demanded to search me, threw my bag to the floor, just because you trusted their prejudice." Owen bowed his head, his voice choked. "I am not asking forgiveness. I want my fault recorded. But I cannot stay silent anymore. Because when you stood here, I realized I have never worked for someone I respect." A long silence followed. Then, Lena's voice came through the speaker. "Arya, I found evidence. 3 recent security reports signed by Owen, all involving clients of color, each closed under safety risk. None of them real incidents." Arya closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them and faced Owen. "You want justice? Justice is accountability, and you will be held accountable. But the truth you revealed today will help dismantle this network." Owen nodded, his eyes wet. "I accept." The crowd murmured, no longer pure hatred, but mixed with astonishment. Some nodded, because sometimes justice is not only punishment, but the light that exposes those hiding in the dark. Arya turned back to the entire room, her voice ringing sharp. "This is why I stopped all transactions. This is why we must reform here and now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today, in this very room that once symbolized corrupt power." Applause broke out once more. This time, it was not only support for Arya, it was the collective commitment of the room that they were ready to change. Arya lowered her tone, yet it still carried. "We will build a bank where justice is not a slogan, but a process, where clients are not forced to prove their worth through skin color or clothing, where every employee understands that the greatest power is not in accounts, but in how they treat others. Tessa wept. Naya covered her mouth in tears. Jordan whispered, "This is history. Right here in Miami. In this very room." Arya looked upward, her eyes ablaze. "And you will be the witnesses. Witnesses to the moment we buried silence and raised justice." The air inside the lounge felt as if it was waiting for another explosion. What Owen Pratt had just confessed did more than shatter the mask of security. It left behind a gaping hole. Who else was involved? Arya Morgan didn't take her eyes off Owen, but her voice carried across the entire room. Complicity did not begin with you. You were only a link. The question now is, how long is this chain? Owen clenched his fists, then exhaled hard, as if stepping off a cliff. There is something, they called it, a tag, a secret flag in the CRM system. It was used to mark so-called troublesome clients. In truth, it was a list of people deemed unfit, often just because they asked too many questions, or because they didn't look like VIP clients. Murmurs erupted. Nia Wallace clutched her phone, her face pale. Tessa Nguyen whispered, "Oh my God." Arya spoke slowly. "Say it clearly, Owen. Who managed that list?" Owen swallowed. Dana signed the approvals. Sloane entered the data. I was alerted when someone on the list entered the branch. My job was to handle them before they caused trouble. The truth landed like a stone slab. Several clients jumped to their feet in anger. A middle-aged black man in a modest suit spoke through clenched teeth. "Now I know why my account kept getting blocked without reason. I was one of your troublesome ones." Arya turned her phone lightly in her hand. "Lena?" Lena Ortiz's voice came instantly, cold but urgent. "I'm accessing the CRM now. Yes, there is a hidden field named Client Suitability, Tag." I pulled the data. 17 clients were flagged. 15 of them are black or Latino. None have any violation reports attached. I am sending the full list to the Ethics Council and the Legal Department. The room erupted. An older woman shot to her feet, slamming her hand on the table. "This is systemic discrimination. You cannot deny it anymore." Dana Whitfield staggered, her face twisted, screaming, "It was a bank protection procedure. Don't distort it." But no one listened anymore. Grant Ellison stood, his face flushed, trying to salvage ground. "You are overreacting. This was just risk management. Don't turn it into a witch hunt." Calvin Holt, who had remained silent until now, stepped out from the rows of seats. His tall frame forced Grant to step back. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. No, this was not risk management. This was the classification of people, and today that classification is buried. Applause broke out, first scattered, then spreading. Arya stepped forward, facing Dana directly. Her voice was firm. "You thought you were the gatekeeper, but the gate you built opened only for a few and slammed shut on everyone who did not look like you. That gate is broken today." Dana trembled, her lips moving, but no rebuttal came. Arya turned to the entire room. "From this moment, the tag list is gone. Every client is equal in their right to be served. No more hidden codes, no more secret marks. We do not build a bank on silence, but on transparency." Nia Wallace broke into tears, covering her face. Tessa wrapped her arms around her, whispering, "It's over, Nia. We've won." But Arya did not stop. She raised her voice, strong and precise. "This is why I declared the Summit Equity Program. We will track not only numbers, but words. Every insult, every act of contempt will become evidence. No one will hide in the shadows of procedure again. If you harm a client, the entire system will know." and you will pay." The clients erupted into applause. Many stood tall. A few young employees who had stayed silent in the corners now lifted their heads, their eyes shining. Jordan Park spoke, his voice trembling but clear. This is something I have never seen in a bank. A promise, and a promise spoken here, in front of those once dismissed. Calvin Holt nodded, his gaze unwavering. Justice does not need a microphone. It only needs someone willing to speak. Arya looked around, letting every pair of eyes meet hers. She felt the weight of trust pressing toward her, and she knew, from this moment, she was no longer alone. A cough sounded at the back of the room. Everyone turned. An older man with neatly combed silver hair stood slowly. He wore a Summit client badge on his lapel. His voice was raspy but clear. "My name is Richard Langford. I was once the regional training director here, 10 years ago. I was the one who trained Dana, Gerald, and Sloane on their first days." The room rippled with shock. Richard drew a deep breath, his eyes moist. "We did not teach them the words people of color or immigrant. But we taught other words: quality clients, suitable profile. We planted the seeds. And today, I see those seeds have grown into a monster." A sob came from Tessa. Some clients covered their mouths. Richard bowed his head, his voice breaking. "I stand here to admit, the fault is not only theirs. The fault began with us, and I want to help fix it." Arya studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, slow and deliberate. "At last, the truth has a witness from within. If you truly want to fix it, begin today. Retrain, but this time, retrain fairness." Richard nodded, his eyes brimming. "I will, I swear." The room fell silent, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of truth, finally spoken after years buried. Arya lifted her head, her voice resounding. "Silence has long been our enemy, but today, silence has been broken. And when silence falls, justice will rise." Richard Langford's confession struck like the final hammer blow. The room fell into absolute silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of those who had just been exposed. Every eye turned toward Arya Morgan, waiting for the next verdict. A police officer, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, broke the silence. "We came here for a fraud report, but what has unfolded shows something far greater. Not a single fraud case, but an entire system warped. And clearly, Mrs. Morgan has the authority to act." He glanced at Dana, Sloane, and Gerald before finishing. "We will write a full report. But there will be no charges against Mrs. Morgan. On the contrary, those who provided false information may have to answer in court." The room erupted in whispers. Some clients chuckled under their breath, others applauded. Dana collapsed into her seat, shoulders shaking violently. Sloane buried her face in her hands. Gerald sighed, as though finally surrendering to fate. Arya lifted her head high, her voice resounding. "You tried to drag me out of this room as a stranger, but this place, today, will become the birthplace of reform." She turned to the rows of clients. "I declare the Miami branch is suspended in all operations, but not to shut down, to reopen with a new face." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone voiced their worry. "If it stops, what happens to our transactions?" Arya raised her hand to calm them. "I have prepared for this. The board has approved a priority line to process all urgent transactions at other branches. No one will suffer losses. But if we allow this branch to keep operating as it has, then everyone loses trust, loses dignity." Lena Ortiz's voice came through the speaker, firm, confirmed. The transition protocol has been activated. Transactions are being rerouted. Not a single client disadvantaged. The worry faded, replaced by nods of agreement. A middle-aged woman spoke up loudly. I support this. Trust is more important than speed. Aria turned back, her voice deep but strong. We will begin the Summit Equity Program right here, and I want every witness in this room to be a part of it. She pointed toward the group of clients. Tessa, Naya, Jordan, Calvin. You spoke up when others stayed silent. Stand with me. From today, you are the symbols of why we reform. Tessa stepped forward, her eyes still wet but burning bright. I never thought my trembling voice mattered, but today I will keep speaking. Naya clutched her phone tightly, nodding hard. I came here only to open an account. But if my small dream can help change a system, I won't miss this chance. Jordan stepped up, his voice quiet but steady. I used to think filming was the only way to make justice happen. But now I see. Justice begins with words, and I will never be silent again. Calvin placed a hand on Aria's shoulder, his voice booming. We will be the wall. We will not let silence return. Applause thundered, no longer scattered, but united like music. Aria turned to the police. You are witnesses? You have seen what happened here. Record it. Not just the wrongdoing, but the change. The officer nodded. We will write the report, every detail intact, both the guilt and the justice. Aria drew a long breath, then stepped forward, her voice slower now, but each word carved into stone. In the past 10 minutes, I have been humiliated, called a fraud, threatened to be dragged out. Yet I am still standing here. No shouting, no fighting, no need for cameras, only the truth. And the truth has prevailed. Many clients wept. An elderly black man whispered, For the first time in my life, I see fairness bloom before my eyes. Aria pressed on. But we are not done. Today, we did not just fire a few individuals. We buried an entire culture of corruption. A culture that believed power meant the right to humiliate others. A culture that hid prejudice behind procedure. A culture that thought silence would keep them safe. That culture is dead. And from its ashes, a new culture will rise. Lena's voice cut in, unwavering. The Ethics Council has approved. Aria has full authority to lead this branch's reform. They will arrive within 10 minutes to begin the evaluation. Aria nodded. She swept her gaze across the room, her eyes burning like fire. Those of you here today will be witnesses. Witnesses to the moment we prove that justice is not only written in laws but lived in every action. Applause rolled through the room like crashing waves. In the corner, Richard Langford stood silently, his face a mix of shame and relief. He whispered to himself, I should have done this 10 years ago. Aria heard him. She turned toward him and nodded gently. It is never too late to speak the truth. Today, you did. Richard's throat tightened, his eyes wet. Aria turned back, her voice ringing like a vow. I am not only reforming a branch. I am reforming an entire system. And it begins here, with ordinary people who dared to stand. This bank will never be the same again, because today we have proven justice is real. The confession of Richard Langford landed like the final strike of a hammer. The room froze in silence, broken only by the heavy breaths of those whose masks had just been torn away. Every gaze locked on Aria Morgan, waiting for the next sentence. A chair scraped sharply against the floor. All heads turned. Natalie Ross, a 31-year-old credit officer who had been standing pale and pressed against the wall, now stepped forward, trembling. Wait. Natalie's voice was weak, but carried clearly in the tense room. I have to say this, all eyes fixed on her. Dana lifted her head, eyes wide, whispering, "Be quiet, don't say a word." But Natalie drew a breath, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I cannot stay silent." Her voice cracked. For the past year, I buried 8 complaints, all from women of color. I marked them as duplicates, unverified, or expired. I did it because Dana told me to. She said if they reached the system, the branch would be investigated. I knew it was wrong. But I did it. The room shook. Angry murmurs exploded. A client shouted, "You destroyed our voices just to protect clean statistics?" Natalie bowed her head, sobbing. I was afraid. I thought if I resisted, I would be cast out. I chose silence, and my silence hurt others. Aria stepped forward, her eyes cold, but her voice low and heavy. Silence is not a neutral. Silence is complicity, and today you admitted it. That is the first step, but it is not enough. She turned her phone. "Lena, verify." Lena Ortiz's voice came sharp and precise. 8 blocked complaints found, all under Natalie Ross's login. 4 co-signed by Gerald Stone. This is indisputable evidence. The sound of strained breathing filled the room. Gerald lowered his head into his trembling hands. Dana sat stiff, her eyes bloodshot. Aria fixed her gaze on Natalie. "You say you were afraid. But the truth is, you held the torch that burned others. No one forced your finger to press delete. You chose, and with each choice, a dream died." Natalie broke down, collapsing to the floor. I know I am not asking forgiveness. I only want the truth to be heard." No one touched her. Her confession was weight enough to keep her on her knees. Aria turned to face the room, her voice echoing like church bells. This proves the problem was never just a few individuals. This was a culture of burying truth, a culture that displayed slogans of fairness. But inside, only hands write in false reports. Applause burst from Calvin Holt. He nodded, eyes blazing. Today, truth is no longer locked in files. It has risen and spoken. A gravelly voice came from the back. All eyes turned. Richard Langford, silver-haired, his face lined with age, stepped forward slowly, his tone heavy with sorrow. She is right. This culture was not created by Dinah, not by Natalie, not by Gerald alone. It was seeded earlier, by us, the trainers. I taught them to prioritize high-potential clients. I allowed words like quality and suitable to become the curtain-hiding prejudice. Today, I must own that fault. Sobs broke out in corners. A woman whispered, "At least finally someone admits it." Aria nodded slightly, her eyes stern but not merciless. "Mr. Langford, your confession does not erase the past, but it can open the path forward. If you are sincere, you will help us retrain from the ground up." Richard bowed his head, eyes wet. "I will. This is my last chance to make it right." The air stretched taut like a string, but this time it was not fear. It was anticipation for a new beginning. Aria addressed the clients and employees. From this moment, the Summit Equity Program is officially in effect. Every word, every action will be recorded. No more anonymity. No more burial. Every client's voice will be heard and preserved. Applause thundered, shaking the walls. Jordan Park leapt up, his voice choked but fierce. "We are witnessing history, not on a screen, right here." Nia Wallace clutched her phone, tears streaming. "I only came to open an account. But today, I leave knowing I am not invisible." Aria placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice softening. "You were never invisible. They only pretended not to see. But from today, we will make them look. Applause surged again, stronger than before, no longer scattered, but crashing like waves, drowning out every false defense. Arya lifted her head, her eyes blazing, and ended with words that made the entire room tremble. They once buried 8 voices. Today, those 8 voices have risen. And from this day forward, no voice will ever be buried again. The lounge seemed to stand still. Every eye was fixed on Arya Morgan. From a woman once dismissed, once branded a fraud, she now stood at the center of the room like the pillar of a building rebuilt upon ruins. Arya drew a deep breath and spoke, her voice not raised but each word striking hard into the hearts around her. We have exposed the truth. We have heard the confessions. But today is not only the day we unmask lies. Today is the day we redefine Summit Wealth Bank. From this moment, this bank no longer belongs to those who wield power to humiliate others. It belongs to those who believe that fairness is the only foundation of trust. The room trembled. Some clients broke into tears. A middle-aged black man whispered, "This is the first time I have ever heard a CEO say such words, right here in the customer lounge." Arya lifted the small black folder, embossed with the golden logo. She opened it for all to see, revealing the CEO badge, the certificate of her 81% ownership, and the letter of authorization from the board of directors. This is not an empty promise. This is legal authority, and I will use it to rewrite the rules of the game. Lena Ortiz's voice rang clearly from the phone speaker, like a bell of confirmation. The board of directors confirms. Arya Morgan has full authority to implement the Summit Equity Program. Effective immediately, the files of violating employees have been locked, access revoked. All data will be forwarded to the Ethics Committee. A collective sigh spread through the room, like a weight falling from many shoulders. Nods appeared, eyes glimmering with hope. Arya turned to the group of young employees standing silently in the corner. Her voice softened, yet carried the same strength. You have a choice. Either you sign the pledge to take part in reform, or you walk away. There is no more grey area. No more, I was only following orders. From this day forward, responsibility belongs to every individual. A young woman nodded, eyes brimming with tears. I will sign. I want to stay. I want to work for this bank. But a new bank. Applause rose, spreading wider. Arya stepped forward, her eyes sweeping across the entire room. We will begin with verbal audits, not only numbers, but words. Every word spoken in this branch will be recorded and evaluated. Every client will have the right to respond immediately. There will be no more hiding place for prejudice. Calvin Holt nodded firmly, his voice booming. This is justice. Not justice on paper, but justice in every breath we take, Arya continued. Second, face-to-face pledge. Every employee will sign their commitment in person, in front of colleagues and clients, no longer hidden in closed offices. Anyone who wants to work here must look clients in the eye and promise to respect them. Jordan Park whispered to himself. That promise will be stronger than any clip I have ever filmed. Arya turned to Nia Wallace, her voice gentle. Nia, you will be the first to benefit from this change. Your account will be opened free of charge, directly under the supervision of the Ethics Council. No one will ever again have the right to refuse you. Nia broke into sobs, collapsing onto Tessa's shoulder. Thank you for seeing me. Another wave of applause thundered, no longer scattered but unified, echoing like a collective vow. Arya lowered her voice, slow and deliberate, as if etching each word into every heart. You once thought justice had to shout to be heard. But I stand here, not shouting, not recording. I only speak clearly, and the truth has carried further than any scream. The room fell silent, broken only by the muffled sobs of those crying. Aria closed with a vow. From this day forward, Summit Wealth Bank will never again be a place where silence prevails. It will be a place where truth is spoken. And if I can do this here, then anyone can do it, anywhere. Applause erupted, fierce as a storm, sweeping away every remnant of fear. The lounge doors burst open. Internal compliance officers entered, holding files. They bowed their heads to Aria and spoke loudly. "We are here to begin the reform process." Aria nodded, turned back to the room, her voice ringing like the bell that heralds a new era. "Then let us begin." In that VIP lounge, an old chapter had closed, a chapter of silence, of prejudice, of false power, and a new chapter opened, where justice is not just a slogan hung on a wall, but the breath in every word spoken, where truth is no longer buried. Aria Morgan proved that you do not need to shout to be heard. Sometimes real strength lies in steadfastness, in the ability to stand firm through the storm and speak the truth. It was that calm resolve that shook an entire system. If you have ever been dismissed, ever been cast aside because of your appearance or your background, remember this: your worth does not lie in the judgment of others. It lies in the voice you dare to raise. And sometimes, a single voice is enough to change not just a room, but the world. Let today's story remind us all that justice does not begin on notice boards. It begins with you, with the choice between remaining silent or choosing to speak out. If you believe that truth must always be heard, hit like to help this story spread. Subscribe to the channel to join us on future journeys where justice is rewritten through each story. And before you leave, comment the words, "Voice matters," to affirm that you too believe in the power of a voice, even when it seems the smallest of all.